Breaking news tonight, House Democrats accusing Bill Barr's Justice Department of trying to rewrite history in a bid to personally protect Trump. This is a response to the Justice Department's somewhat unusual step. They're asking a court to block an otherwise lawful subpoena to get Trump's financial records. House Democrats say this request has, quote, no grounding in history or law, and that the arguments here represent what the department wishes the law were, but they are not the law. Now, Barr's attorneys here have been arguing in court that the banks and other entities shouldn't have to comply with these, as I say, otherwise lawful subpoenas, claiming the probes could, quote, distract Donald Trump from the energetic performance of his constitutional duties. Now, one question is, how energetic is he? We have charted his daily schedules before. But more broadly, look at this. 221 days on golf properties. Unprecedented amount of executive time. Tweeting, watching television. So that goes to the factual side. What about the legal side? The argument that no matter who's president, no matter how they keep their schedule, you would be too distracted to deal with the courts, with these otherwise lawful requests. Well, President Clinton did argue at one point that if he complied with every investigation, he would be distracted away from his duties. And here's what Supreme Court Justice Scalia said about why they ruled against him.
President is, it's a full-time job, and he's and any intrusion upon his time is intrusion. I must say, I don't find that terribly persuasive. I see presidents riding horseback, chopping firewood, fishing for stickfish, playing golf, and so forth and so on.
I'm joined by Congressman Hakeem Jeffries, who's on the Judiciary Committee and a member of Democratic leadership. Thanks for being here.
Good to see you.
Great to see you. As you know, that was a slightly different context, but Justice Scalia was speaking for part of why the court ruled ultimately that being president is not a get-out-of-subpoena-free card.
Well, that's correct. Donald Trump is not a part-time school board member, with all due respect to hard-working school board members. He's the president of the United States of America, the leader of the free world, the most powerful individual on the global stage. He has a responsibility in the context of our constitutional democratic republic to recognize that the House and the Senate were designed to be separate and co-equal branches of government for the people. We don't work for Donald Trump. We work for everyday Americans. And so we have a constitutional responsibility to serve as a check and balance on an out-of-control executive branch. We are undertaking our lawful constitutional legislative oversight responsibilities. Bill Barr is rewriting the Constitution, claiming we have no legitimate purpose. The Constitution is our legitimate purpose.
And that lays out sort of the battle in the courts. Then you have the specific issue of Mr. Bill Barr. Dahlia Lithwick, who I'm sure you know is a legal scholar, she's an independent expert. She's not a part of your Democratic team. But she has argued here on the beat that really there is a problem with how Mr. Barr is carrying out his role. Take a look.
It feels like Barr sort of leaping in front of the president yet again and saying, first and foremost, my interest is not the Justice Department or the United States people. It's protecting this president.
Win or lose, I mean, the courts are ultimately going to decide, and it could go to the Supreme Court, which we just heard from in a different context, about what the president has to deal with. Are you at all concerned that Mr. Barr, though, has interceded in cases that seem more personal than public in nature?
Definitely. And, the so-called Attorney General has long since flushed his personal integrity down the toilet. That's a shame. And so many members of the Trump cabinet have done that over the last 3 years or so. And I expect that will continue because the president surrounds himself with sycophants. But look at what is at stake. We want those Deutsche Bank records because we believe that they could show potential evidence of criminality. The Deutsche Bank employees on the ground recommended that suspicious activity reports be filed as it relates to Donald Trump's business activities and transactions in 2016 and 2017. Higher-ups at Deutsche Bank vetoed that recommendation and squelched it. We want to know what Donald Trump is potentially hiding as part of our oversight responsibilities so we can share that information with the American people.
Now, the last thing I want to ask you about, because I understand where you're coming from on that, is impeachment. You remember those old toothpaste ads that would say, like, 9 out of 10 dentists prefer this toothpaste? Can 9 out of 10 dentists be wrong?
That's right.
Okay. Well, can 126 Democrats in your caucus, and I know you're part of leadership, that's the majority of your caucus, that you work with them.
Yeah.
Like toothpaste, sir, I ask you, can 126 Democrats be wrong?
They definitely can't be wrong, but there are different perspectives, and what we've decided to do is to make sure that every member has an opportunity over the next couple of weeks during this district work period in August to talk to their constituents and then follow their conscience.
Follow their conscience, but you and Speaker Pelosi still disagree with them that you should move forward on impeaching Trump.
No, well, my view is that Jerry Nadler is in the midst of an impeachment investigation. I'm part of that impeachment investigation.
You're
in
on the
context of
Judiciary Committee,
Committee.
but every time we've talked about, you check me if I am getting my history wrong. Every time we talk about it, you're defending the Speaker.
Well, because I believe the Speaker has the correct perspective in terms of making sure that we follow the facts, apply the law, be guided by the Constitution, come together after the August recess in September, we're going to have to make some decisions. But in order for us to proceed with any form of accountability inquiry, including an impeachment inquiry, we need fact witnesses and we need documents. That's why we're fighting before the Second Circuit, fighting before the D.C. Circuit. Eventually, we're going to have to fight before the Supreme Court so we can get the information to then present to the American people.
Congressman Hakeem Jeffries, very interesting getting you on multiple items.
Thank
you
you
for coming on the beat, sir.
Great to see you always.
We'll have you back. Hey, I'm Ari Melber from MSNBC. You can see more of our videos right here, or better yet, subscribe to our YouTube channel below. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us, and we appreciate that.